I never thought a wood stove would be the thing that brought down an entire homeowners association. But here we are. My name is Frank Lawson, and I bought my property in Pine Ridge Estates, Colorado back in 2019. The place sits on 3 acres at the edge of a small development of about 40 homes, nestled in the mountains about 20 miles outside of Boulder. When I purchased the land, it came with an old farmhouse that needed work, but it also came with something else that made it valuable to the community. A small pump house that serviced the private well system for the entire neighborhood. The previous owner, an elderly man named Gerald, had maintained the pump house for decades. It was a simple arrangement. The HOA paid him a modest stipend of $300 a month to keep the equipment running and the building heated during winter. The heating part was crucial because Colorado winters can drop well below freezing, and frozen pipes meant no water for anyone. When I bought the property, the HOA president at the time, a reasonable guy named Tom, asked if I would continue the arrangement. I agreed, and for the first 3 years everything ran smoothly. The pump house sat about 200 yards from my main house, closer to the road. It was a small structure, maybe 12 by 12 feet, with thick walls and a single door. Inside was the well pump, pressure tanks, filtration equipment, and a beautiful old wood stove that Gerald had installed back in the 80s. That stove was a beast, a cast iron monster that could burn all night on a single load of wood. I would check it twice a day during winter, morning and evening, adding wood as needed to keep the temperature above 50 degrees. My own house had a similar setup. I had installed a newer wood stove in my living room shortly after moving in, one of those EPA-certified models that burned clean and efficient. Between that and my backup electric baseboards, I stayed comfortable even during the worst blizzards. I loved the wood stove. There was something satisfying about cutting my own firewood, stacking it, and knowing I could heat my home without depending entirely on the electric grid. Everything changed in early 2023 when Tom moved away and the HOA held elections for a new board. That is when I met Brenda Garrison. Brenda was 52 years old, recently divorced, and had apparently decided that her new purpose in life was to make everyone else in Pine Ridge Estates as miserable as possible. She bought a house right in the center of the development, one of the newer constructions with all the modern amenities. Within a month of moving in, she was attending HOA meetings and volunteering for committees. Within 3 months, she had somehow gotten herself elected as HOA president. Her campaign had been about modernization and property values. She wanted Pine Ridge Estates to look more upscale, more refined. She talked about attracting a better class of homeowner, which I found insulting since I considered myself a perfectly good class of homeowner. But enough people bought into her vision, or maybe they just did not care enough to vote against her, and suddenly, Brenda was in charge. The first sign of trouble came in November 2023. I was splitting wood behind my house on a Saturday morning when I heard a car coming up my long driveway. I looked up to see a white Mercedes SUV kicking up dust as it approached. I did not recognize the vehicle, but I had a sinking feeling I knew who it was. Brenda climbed out of her SUV wearing what looked like expensive athleisure wear, the kind of outfit that had never seen actual exercise. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and she wore oversized sunglasses despite the overcast sky. "Frank Lawson," she called out, not bothering with a greeting. "That is me," I said, setting down my axe. "Can I help you?" "I am Brenda Garrison, the HOA president. I need to speak with you about a serious violation." I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked over. "What violation would that be?" She pulled out her phone and started scrolling. I have been reviewing our community covenants, conditions, and restrictions, and I have discovered that you are operating not one, but two wood stoves on your property. This is in direct violation of Section 14, Paragraph C, which states that no homeowner shall maintain any heating apparatus that produces visible smoke emissions or creates a fire hazard. I stared at her. That section does not exist. I read the entire CC and Articus before I bought this place. There is nothing about wood stoves. Well, there is now, she said, her voice taking on a sharp edge. The board voted to amend the regulations last month. All homeowners were notified by email. I did not get any email. That is not my problem. Ignorance of the rules is no excuse. She looked past me at my house, her nose wrinkling. I can smell the smoke from here. It is unpleasant and it lowers property values. I am giving you 30 days to remove both wood stoves from your property. Hold on, I said, trying to keep my voice level. You cannot just change the rules and expect everyone to comply immediately. These wood stoves are my primary heat source, and one of them is in the pump house that I maintain for the whole community. I am aware of the pump house situation, Brenda said. We will be addressing that separately. But the rules are the rules, Frank. 30 days. I will send you a formal notice in writing. She turned to leave, but I called after her. What about all the other homes with wood stoves? Are you going to make them remove theirs too? She paused and looked back at me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Yours are the only ones that have been reported as a nuisance. See that you comply, or the HOA will be forced to take legal action. With that, she got back in her Mercedes and drove away, leaving me standing in my driveway feeling like I had just been hit by a tornado. Over the next few days, I did some investigating. I called several neighbors, including old Tom, who had moved to Arizona but still kept in touch with people in the development. What I discovered made my blood boil. Brenda had not sent any community-wide email about the rule change. She had held a special board meeting with only her two cronies present, both of whom she had gotten elected alongside her. They had voted on the amendment with just the three of them, no community input, no proper notice. According to Tom, that was a clear violation of Colorado HOA law, which required proper notice and a quorum for any CC and R amendments. Furthermore, at least 8 other homes in the development had wood stoves or fireplaces that they used regularly. But Brenda was only targeting me. Tom had a theory about why. She wants your land, Frank, he told me over the phone. I heard through the grapevine that she has been talking about buying up properties on the edges of the development. Your place is worth a lot because of the acreage. I think she is trying to make your life difficult so you will sell cheap. That made a twisted kind of sense. My property was valuable, and I had gotten it for a reasonable price because Gerald had wanted it to go to someone who would appreciate it. Current market value was probably double what I paid. The formal notice arrived a week later, certified mail. It was full of legal language and threats about fines and liens if I did not comply. The deadline was December 15th, 2023. I consulted with a lawyer in Boulder, a woman named Patricia Fletcher who specialized in HOA disputes. She reviewed everything and confirmed what Tom had told me. This amendment is invalid, Patricia said, sitting across from me in her office. They did not follow proper procedure. You could fight this and win, but it will cost you. Legal fees, time, stress. HOAs can make your life hell even when they are in the wrong because they have the association funds to draw from for legal battles. So what do you recommend? I asked. Honestly, ignore the notice. Keep documentation of everything. If they try to fine you or place a lien, we will countersue for improper procedure and harassment. Most HOAs back down when they realize a homeowner is serious about fighting back. I took her advice. December 15th came and went, and I did nothing. My wood stoves stayed right where they were, and I kept burning wood through one of the coldest Decembers on record. On December 20th, I received another notice. This time, Brenda was fining me $500 for non-compliance, with additional fines of $100 per day until I removed the wood stoves. She also included a threat to place a lien on my property if the fines were not paid within 60 days. I forwarded everything to Patricia, who sent a strongly worded letter to the HOA explaining that their amendment was invalid and any fines or liens would result in a lawsuit. She also pointed out that they were singling me out while ignoring identical violations by other homeowners, which constituted harassment and selective enforcement. Christmas came and went. The standoff continued. Then, in early January, things escalated. I was out checking the pump house on a frigid morning when I noticed something wrong. The door was slightly ajar, which was odd because I always made sure to secure it. I pushed it open and immediately felt the cold air. The wood stove was stone cold, completely out. That had never happened before, not even during the worst weather. I looked around and quickly realized what had occurred. Someone had removed the damper handle from the stove, making it impossible to control the airflow properly. The fire had burned out rapidly overnight without proper regulation. Worse, they had also taken the key I kept hanging on a hook by the door, the spare key that I used for the lock. The temperature inside the pump house had dropped to just above freezing. Another few hours and the pipes could have frozen, causing catastrophic damage to the well system. I got the stove relit and spent the next hour making sure everything was functioning properly. Then, I drove straight to the hardware store and bought a new lock and a security camera. I installed both immediately, mounting the camera high in a corner where it had a clear view of the door. 2 days later, the camera caught Brenda. I was reviewing the footage on my laptop when I saw her Mercedes pull up at 8 in the evening. She got out, looked around nervously, and tried the door. Finding it locked, she stood there for a moment, clearly frustrated. Then she did something that made my jaw drop. She pulled out a can of spray paint and wrote across the door in large red letters, "Fire hazard condemned by HOA." I saved the footage immediately and sent it to Patricia. Her response was swift. "That is criminal mischief and possibly vandalism," she wrote back. "You could press charges. More importantly, this gives us tremendous leverage. I will draft a cease and desist letter immediately." But before Patricia could send her letter, Brenda made her boldest move yet. On January 15th, I received a certified letter from a lawyer representing the HOA. It was not their usual attorney, but some high-priced firm out of Denver. The letter stated that the HOA was terminating our agreement regarding the pump house maintenance. They would no longer pay me the monthly stipend, and they were demanding I surrender the key to the pump house within 48 hours. Furthermore, they claimed that the pump house itself was common property and that I had no right to use it for any purpose. They were demanding I remove my wood stove from the premises and cease entering the building. I read the letter 3 times, feeling my anger build with each reading. This was insane. The pump house sat on my property. I had the deed right in my files, showing clearly that the structure was within my property boundaries. The HOA had an easement to access it and maintain the well equipment, but the building itself was mine. I called Patricia immediately. "They cannot do this, right?" "Absolutely not," she confirmed after I read her the letter. "The pump house is on your deeded property. They are way out of line. But Frank, I have to ask you something. What happens if you stop maintaining the heat in that building? I had been thinking about exactly that. The pipes will freeze. The well pump will be destroyed. Nobody in the development will have water until it is fixed, and that will cost tens of thousands of dollars. And who will be responsible for that cost? The HOA, since they are terminating our agreement and telling me to stay out of the building. Patricia was quiet for a moment. I want you to think very carefully about what I am going to suggest. You have no legal obligation to heat that pump house. Your agreement was with the previous HOA board, and this board is terminating it. If they are telling you to stay out and remove your heating equipment, then you should comply. What happens after that is their responsibility, not yours. You are saying I should let it freeze. I am saying you should document everything, follow their instructions exactly, and let them deal with the consequences of their decisions. Sometimes people need to learn expensive lessons. I spent that night thinking about it. Part of me felt guilty about potentially leaving my neighbors without water. But another part of me, the angry part that was tired of being pushed around by Brenda and her power trip, wanted to see this through. The next morning, I made my decision. I printed out the letter from the HOA attorney and took a photograph of it. Then, I went to the pump house, took multiple photos and videos showing the wood stove and the current temperature inside, and turned off the stove. I let the fire burn out naturally, cleaned out the ash and left the building cold. I also printed out a notice of my own and taped it to the door. Per instructions from HOA Legal Counsel, dated January 15, 2024, I am no longer maintaining this pump house or providing heating services. All questions and responsibilities regarding this structure should be directed to the Pine Ridge Estates HOA Board. Frank Lawson. Then I went home, uploaded all my documentation to cloud storage, and waited. The weather forecast was predicting a cold snap. Temperatures were supposed to drop into the single digits over the next week. Perfect timing if you were looking to make a point. Nothing happened for the first 3 days. The temperature in the pump house, which I monitored via a remote thermometer I had left inside, dropped steadily. By day 4, it was at 20 degrees inside the building. On day 5, my phone started ringing early in the morning. It was my neighbor to the south, a guy named Pete who worked from home. "Frank, do you know what is going on with the water? I do not have any pressure." "Check with the HOA," I told him. "They terminated my maintenance agreement with the pump house." "What? Why would they do that?" I gave him the short version of the story. Pete was quiet for a long moment. "That is the dumbest thing I have ever heard," he finally said. "So nobody is heating the pump house? Not since the HOA told me to stop. In the middle of January? Yep. We are all screwed, are we not?" I would say that is a fair assessment. Within an hour, my phone was blowing up. Neighbors were calling, texting, messaging me on Facebook. Nobody had water. Someone had apparently tried to reach Brenda, but she was not answering her phone. The other 2 board members claimed they did not know anything about the pump house situation. I documented every call and message. Around noon, I received a frantic voicemail from Brenda herself. "Frank, this is Brenda Garrison. I do not know what kind of game you are playing, but you need to get out to that pump house right now and fix whatever you did. People are calling me nonstop about the water being out. This is completely unacceptable. Call me back immediately." I saved the voicemail and did not call back. Instead, I forwarded it to Patricia. An hour later, I saw Brenda's Mercedes speeding up the road toward my property. I watched from my window as she stopped at the pump house. She got out, tried the door, found it locked, and then started banging on it. She pulled out her phone and appeared to be making calls. After about 10 minutes, she got back in her car and drove up to my house. I did not answer the door when she knocked. I just watched through the window as she pounded and yelled. "Frank, I know you are in there. Open this door right now. You are sabotaging the community water supply. This is illegal. I am calling the sheriff." I continued to ignore her. After about 5 minutes of this, she gave up and drove away. I immediately checked the security camera footage from the pump house and was not surprised to see that she had tried to break the lock with a rock. She had not succeeded, but the attempt was clearly visible on camera. 20 minutes later, a sheriff's deputy pulled up to my house. I went out to meet him, polite and cooperative. "Sir, I am Deputy Morrison. I received a call about a water emergency, something about a pump house." I invited him in and showed him all my documentation, the original agreement with the previous HOA, the invalid rule change about wood stoves, the harassment and fines, the vandalism caught on camera, the letter from the HOA attorney terminating our agreement and telling me to stay out of the pump house, my notice complying with their instructions. Deputy Morrison looked through everything carefully. He was a young guy, probably late 20s, and he seemed genuinely interested in understanding the situation. "So let me make sure I have this straight," he said. "The HOA told you to stop maintaining this pump house, so you stopped. Now they are mad that you actually did what they told you to do. That is about the size of it. And this building is on your property?" "Yes, sir. I can show you the survey if you need it." He shook his head. "That is okay, so you have not done anything illegal here. You just followed their instructions." "Exactly. And the president of the HOA is the one who spray painted your property and tried to break your lock. I have video of both incidents." Deputy Morrison closed his notebook. "Mr. Lawson, I do not think you have anything to worry about from a legal standpoint. The HOA put themselves in this situation. I cannot force you to maintain property that they told you to stay away from. That would be bizarre. What about the people without water? That is a civil matter between them and their HOA. The HOA needs to get a plumber or well service company out here to fix the problem, not my jurisdiction." He stood up to leave, then paused. "Although, if you have time, I would like a copy of that video showing the president vandalizing your property. That part might actually be criminal." I gave him a USB drive with the footage and he left. I watched his cruiser head back toward Brenda's house and allowed myself a small smile. The next few hours were chaotic. Multiple contractors showed up at the pump house, sent by the HOA. I watched from my house as they tried to figure out what to do. The problem was simple. The pipes had frozen solid. The well pump was likely damaged. They needed to heat the building, thaw everything carefully, assess the damage, and make repairs. That would take days and cost a fortune. One of the contractors knocked on my door around 3 in the afternoon. He was an older guy with a weathered face and kind eyes. "You are Mr. Lawson." "That is me. I am Carl Bennett from Front Range Well Services. I have been brought in to assess the damage to your well pump. I need access to the pump house." "Sure thing," I said. I grabbed the key and walked out with him. "Fair warning, it is cold in there." That was an understatement. When we opened the door, it was like stepping into a freezer, our breath fogged in the air. Carl had a thermometer on his belt that registered 18 degrees. He looked around at the frozen pipes, the ice crystals on the walls, the silent pump. Then he spotted my wood stove with the notice I had taped to it. "Mind if I ask what happened here?" he said. I gave him the story. He listened, occasionally shaking his head. "I have been doing this work for 30 years, he said when I finished. "I have seen a lot of HOA stupidity, but this might take the cake. Do you know how much this is going to cost to fix? I can guess. Try $40,000 to $50,000 minimum. The pump is destroyed. These pipes are going to need to be replaced. The pressure tanks are shot. And that is if we are lucky and the well casing itself was not damaged." He pulled out his phone and started taking pictures. The crazy thing is, if they had just let you keep doing what you were doing, none of this would have happened. You should tell them that. Oh, I will, along with my invoice. Carl spent about an hour documenting everything, then left to make his report. I locked up the pump house and went back inside, where I made myself dinner and tried not to think about 40 families without running water. The guilt was harder to manage than I expected. I knew intellectually that this was not my fault, that I was just following the HOA's instructions. But I also knew that people were suffering because of this standoff. Kids who needed baths, toilets that would not flush, no way to wash dishes or do laundry. Around 8 that evening, I got a call from Tom in Arizona. "Frank, I just heard about what is happening. Half the neighborhood is blowing up my phone asking what they should do." "What did you tell them?" I told them the truth. That Brenda caused this mess and she needs to fix it. "But I wanted to check on you, buddy. Are you doing okay?" The concern in his voice made my throat tight. "Honestly, Tom, I feel like garbage. I know this is not my fault, but people are suffering." "Listen to me," Tom said firmly. "This is 100% Brenda's fault. She could have left well enough alone. She could have followed proper procedure for rule changes. She could have not vandalized your property. She could have not terminated your maintenance agreement in the middle of winter. Every single decision that led to this disaster was hers. Do not let her manipulate you into feeling guilty for her mistakes. I know you are right." I also heard something interesting from my buddy still on the Planning Commission. Brenda apparently applied for a variance last month to subdivide several large lots on the edge of the development. Guess which lot she was targeting? Mine. Bingo. She wants to buy up the edge properties and split them into smaller lots to sell. More homes means more HOA dues, means more money and power for her. This whole thing with the Woodstoves was just her way of pressuring you to sell. After I hung up with Tom, I sat in my living room staring at the ceiling. The manipulation made sense now. Brenda had not just been on a power trip. She had been trying to force me out so she could profit from my land. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about all those families without water, and I kept reminding myself that I was not the villain here. The next morning brought a new development. I received an email from the HOA's attorney in Denver, not the original lawyer who had sent the termination letter, but someone different. This one was from a senior partner at the firm. "Dear Mr. Lawson, I am writing to inform you that our firm no longer represents Pine Ridge Estates HOA. We have withdrawn from their case effective immediately due to ethical concerns regarding the underlying dispute. I cannot say more than that, but I wanted you to know that we will not be pursuing any further action against you. Best regards, Michael Torres, senior partner." I forwarded it to Patricia, who called me immediately. "Frank, this is huge. For a law firm to withdraw like this means they realized their client was in the wrong and they did not want their name attached to the case. Brenda is on her own now. What does that mean practically? It means the HOA probably cannot afford to fight you anymore. Good attorneys are expensive, and firms talk. Word will get around that the Pine Ridge HOA is a problematic client. She's going to have trouble finding representation." That same day, Carl the well contractor came back with his full report. I found out later that he had presented it at an emergency HOA meeting that afternoon. The total cost to repair everything, $62,000. The repairs would take at least 2 weeks, maybe longer. In the meantime, every home in the development would need water delivered by truck, which was another massive expense. The HOA only had about $20,000 in their reserve fund. By that evening, the neighborhood Facebook page was in full revolt. People were demanding Brenda's resignation. They were threatening lawsuits against the HOA. They were calling her every name in the book. Several homeowners had apparently done their own investigating and discovered that the rule change about wood stoves was invalid, that Brenda had violated multiple procedures, and that she had specifically targeted me while ignoring violations by others. The truth was coming out, and it was not pretty for Brenda. Around 9 that night, I heard vehicles coming up my driveway. I looked out to see 3 cars. Pete from next door, a woman named Sandra who lived near the front of the development, and Robert, one of the other board members who had rubber-stamped all of Brenda's decisions. I met them outside. Robert looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. "Frank," Pete started, "we want to apologize. Most of us had no idea what Brenda was doing to you. We are sorry this happened." Sandra nodded. "I have a wood stove in my house. I did not even know about this supposed rule change until today. If I had known she was targeting you specifically, I would have said something." "We want to fix this," Pete continued. "The HOA is holding a special meeting tomorrow night. We are voting to remove Brenda from the board. We are also voting to restore your maintenance agreement for the pump house and to pay for any legal fees you have incurred." Robert finally spoke up, his voice quiet. "I owe you an apology too. I should have questioned what Brenda was doing. I just went along with it because I did not want conflict. That was wrong and I am sorry." I looked at the 3 of them, seeing genuine remorse. "I appreciate that. But here is the thing. The damage is already done. That pump is destroyed. The pipes are frozen. People do not have water. An apology does not fix that." "We know," Sandra said. "That is why we are trying to make it right. We are going to assess every homeowner to cover the repair costs. We are also going to vote to invalidate that wood stove rule and any other changes Brenda made without proper procedure. And we want to hire you back to maintain the pump house once it is fixed." "What about Brenda?" I asked. Pete's expression hardened. "She is done. The neighborhood has turned on her completely. She will be lucky if she does not get sued personally for this disaster." The special meeting the next night was packed. I arrived to find nearly every homeowner in the development crammed into the community clubhouse. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. Brenda sat at the front table looking cornered and angry. The other 2 board members, Robert and a woman named Jennifer, sat as far from her as possible. Pete, who had apparently organized this meeting, called it to order. "We are here tonight to address the water crisis and the decisions that led to it. I am going to start by reading the timeline of events based on documentation that has been provided by Frank Lawson and others." He went through everything methodically: the invalid rule change, the selective enforcement, the harassment and fines, the vandalism caught on camera, the termination of the pump house agreement, the resulting disaster. As he spoke, I watched Brenda's face grow redder. She tried to interrupt several times, but Pete shut her down. "You will have a chance to speak," he told her firmly. When he finished, the room erupted. People were shouting questions, demanding answers, expressing their anger. Pete had to bang a gavel to restore order. "Brenda, you have the floor to respond." She stood up, her hands shaking. "You are all being manipulated. Frank Lawson is the problem here. He was operating dangerous wood-burning stoves that violated our regulations. He was creating smoke and fire hazards that threatened property values. I was just trying to protect this community." "By spray painting his property," someone shouted. "By targeting him while ignoring everyone else with wood stoves," another person added. "By leaving us all without water in the middle of winter." Brenda's voice rose to a near shriek. "I did not leave anyone without water. He did that. He sabotaged the pump house because I enforced the rules." I stood up. "That is not true and you know it. Your attorney sent me a letter telling me to stop maintaining the pump house and remove my equipment. I have it right here. I did exactly what you told me to do." Pete took the letter from me and held it up for everyone to see. "This is on HOA letterhead, signed by the attorney Brenda hired. It clearly terminates Frank's maintenance agreement and demands he remove his wood stove from the pump house. He complied with those instructions." "And while we are on the subject of truth," I continued, "maybe Brenda should tell everyone about her plans to subdivide the edge properties of the development, about how she was trying to force me to sell my land so she could profit from it." That caused another eruption. Brenda tried to deny it, but several people who served on the Planning Commission confirmed that she had indeed applied for subdividing variances. The vote was overwhelming. Brenda was removed from the board immediately, along with Jennifer, who had supported all her decisions. Robert kept his position after promising to be more diligent. Pete and Sandra were voted in as the new president and vice president, respectively. The new board immediately voted to restore my maintenance agreement, retroactive to when Brenda had terminated it. They voted to invalidate the Woodstove rule and any other changes made without proper procedure. They voted to authorize a special assessment to pay for the well repairs. And they voted to have the HOA's insurance company pursue reimbursement from Brenda personally for the damage caused by her actions. After the meeting, Brenda stormed out without speaking to anyone. I heard later that she put her house up for sale within a week, but the story did not end there. The well repairs took 3 weeks. During that time, the entire development had to have water trucked in. The final cost came to $78,000, significantly more than the initial estimate. Each homeowner was assessed nearly $2,000 to cover it. People were not happy, and several of them decided to pursue legal action against Brenda personally. They formed a group, hired a lawyer, and sued her for the full cost of the repairs plus the water delivery expenses plus legal fees. I was asked to be part of the lawsuit, but I declined. Patricia advised me that I had a separate, stronger case for harassment and property damage, and we should pursue that independently. In March, I filed a civil suit against Brenda for harassment, vandalism, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. I asked for $50,000 in damages plus legal fees. Brenda tried to fight it at first. She hired a lawyer and filed a counter-suit claiming that I had sabotaged the well system and should be responsible for all the damages. But her case fell apart quickly. I had documentation of everything. I had video evidence of her vandalizing my property. I had the letter from her attorney terminating the maintenance agreement. I had testimony from Deputy Morrison about how she tried to get me arrested for following her own instructions. In May, her lawyer advised her to settle. In June, we reached an agreement. Brenda would pay me $30,000, drop all claims against me, and sign a document admitting that she had harassed me and caused the well damage through her own decisions. In return, I would not pursue criminal charges for the vandalism. The neighborhood lawsuit against her went to court in August. The judge was not sympathetic to her defense. He ruled that, as HOA president, she had breached her fiduciary duty to the homeowners by acting on personal motives rather than in the community's interest. He awarded the plaintiffs the full amount they were seeking, $85,000. Combined with what she owed me, Brenda was on the hook for over $115,000. She had to sell her house to pay the judgments. I heard she moved somewhere out of state, but I never found out where and I did not care to know. The new HOA board worked hard to rebuild trust in the community. They held regular meetings with full transparency. They established proper procedures for any rule changes. They created a reserve fund specifically for emergency well maintenance. and they made sure that everyone who had a wood stove, including me, could continue using it without harassment. Pete asked me to join the board, but I declined. I had had enough of HOA politics to last a lifetime. But I did agree to continue maintaining the pump house, and I agreed to train 2 other people as backups in case I was ever unavailable. The following winter, my wood stoves kept both my house and the pump house warm and functional. I would load them up with firewood I had cut myself, watch the flames dance behind the glass, and feel grateful for the heat and the peace. In February, I received a letter from the district attorney's office. Apparently, someone had filed a criminal complaint against Brenda for the vandalism caught on my security camera. Deputy Morrison had submitted his report, and the DA decided there was enough evidence to prosecute. I was called as a witness. The case was straightforward. I provided the video footage, I testified about what happened, and the jury convicted her of criminal mischief. She was sentenced to community service and probation, along with a fine. It seemed like a fitting end to the whole mess. Brenda had tried to use the HOA as her personal tool for profit and power, and it had cost her everything. Her money, her reputation, and ultimately, her freedom, at least temporarily. As for me, life returned to normal. I split wood, I maintained the pump house, I enjoyed my 3 acres of peace and quiet. The HOA left me alone. My neighbors appreciated what I did. And my wood stoves kept burning, warm and efficient, exactly as they were meant to do. Sometimes on cold winter mornings, when I walked out to check the pump house and saw the smoke rising from the chimney, I thought about how close I had come to giving in to Brenda's demands. If I had removed those wood stoves, if I had backed down, she would have won. She would have continued her harassment and probably would have eventually forced me to sell. But I had stood my ground. I had documented everything. I had followed the law even when it meant letting the well freeze, and in the end, justice had prevailed. The lesson I took from all of it was simple. HOAs can be wonderful when they are run by reasonable people for the benefit of the community. But when they are hijacked by someone like Brenda, someone driven by personal greed or power or spite, they can become nightmares. The key is to know your rights, document everything, and never let them bully you into submission. Rules have to be followed, but they have to be followed by everyone, including the HOA itself. In October, almost a year after the crisis, the HOA held a community gathering at the clubhouse. It was a potluck dinner, a chance for everyone to socialize and celebrate making it through a difficult time. I brought chili that I had made on my wood stove, slow cooked for hours until it was perfect. People loved it and kept asking for the recipe. I told them the secret was the wood stove, the steady, even heat that you cannot get from a regular stove. Pete gave a speech thanking everyone who had helped the community recover. He specifically mentioned me, and people applauded. I felt embarrassed but also grateful. These were good people who had been led astray by one bad leader. They had corrected course, and that took courage. Sandra came up to me afterward. "I never properly thanked you, Frank. What you did, standing up to Brenda, it helped all of us realize we needed to pay more attention to what was happening with the HOA. We were too passive, too willing to let someone else handle things. That will not happen again." "I hope not," I said. "But if it does, you know who to call." She laughed. "Let's hope it does not come to that." As I drove home that night, back to my property at the edge of the development, I felt satisfied in a way I had not felt in a long time. The fight had been exhausting and stressful, but it had been worth it. My wood stoves were safe. My property was secure. My community was stronger. And Brenda Garrison was gone, living somewhere else with the consequences of her actions following her like a shadow. I parked in my driveway and sat for a moment, looking at my house with smoke gently rising from the chimney. Inside, the wood stove was keeping everything warm and comfortable. Down the hill, the pump house was doing the same for the well equipment, ensuring that 40 families had running water. It was November now, and the first real snow of the season was starting to fall. Big fat flakes drifted down from the dark sky, settling on the ground and the trees and the roof of my house. I got out of the truck and stood there for a moment, face turned up to the sky, feeling the cold kiss of snowflakes on my skin. Tomorrow, I would need to split more firewood. The forecast called for a cold snap next week. But tonight, I would just enjoy the peace and the snow and the knowledge that I had fought for what was right and won. I went inside, added a log to the wood stove, and settled into my chair with a book. The fire crackled and popped. The heat radiated out into the room. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering everything in white. It was going to be a good winter, and I was going to enjoy every minute of it with my wood stoves burning bright and no one to tell me otherwise.